This meeting is being recorded. Good morning. How is everyone?
Good. How are you?
Good. So we have a couple of minutes before 11. And so before we begin this week's experiment, just a couple of things I wanted to bring to your attention. For the previous two experiments that we've done, the classifying matter lab and the particulate nature of matter lab, I was very lenient in allowing late labs to be submitted. I wanted everyone to get comfortable with our new virtual lab environment in the way in which we're conducting labs this semester, as well as the way in which you're submitting your labs. Instead of being on site, being able to submit a paper copy, you've got to submit an electronic copy via the Dropbox. And we're requiring you to submit one single document, either in the form of a .doc or a .pdf file. And the first 2 weeks, I have not penalized you if you turn in one of those two lab reports late. You are not levied any type of late penalty. Also, if you didn't submit a single document, if you submitted multiple picture files, for example, I did not levy any type of penalty for that. But starting this week with our Penny Experiment Lab and all labs that follow this semester, your deadline for submitting your lab report starting this week and every week thereafter will be 11:59 p.m. on Friday night. So you still have a considerable amount of time after our lab is done on Thursday afternoons to get your lab report finished and submitted by 11:59 p.m. Friday night. And so I'll send an email summarizing what I'm discussing with you now. If you are late with your lab report, and if you have a very good reason for needing an extension, I may grant you a 1 or 2 day extension without a penalty. But if I don't hear from you and you're not informing me that you need to submit late and why you need to submit late, then there will be a 5% penalty per day. And so each lab report is worth 100 points. So a 5% penalty will be 5 points. So if you submit it 1 day late, then the most that you can make on that lab would be 95% versus 100%. And so that is a 5% deduction each day that is late. And so if you need to submit a lab report late due to some extenuating circumstance, if you got sick, or if a family member got sick, or there was some other extenuating circumstance that prevented you, if your internet went out and things of that nature, and you just need to be 1 day late, please, please, please just email me. I'm a very understanding person. I understand things come up in life all the time, but the key thing is communication. Inform me if you need to be late and if you have a good reason for needing to submit a late lab report. So the first 2 weeks I was very lenient, but starting with today's lab report that's due tomorrow night, you need to submit it by 11:59 p.m. or there will be a 5% per day late penalty. And you need to make sure that you submit it as a single .doc or .pdf file. Failing to do so will also levy a 5% penalty. Okay. So I will send an email summarizing those statements that I just discussed with you to make sure that we're all on the same page. Any questions before we begin today's experiment? Okay, so today's experiment is the Penny experiment. And so our purpose for doing this exercise today is to use some basic lab techniques that's going to allow us to quantify some information about a penny. And the two pieces of information that we're going to quantify is the mass of a penny and the volume of a penny. The mass of the penny will be determining in units of grams, symbolized with a lowercase g. And for the volume of a penny, we'll be using the unit of milliliter. In order to determine the mass of a penny, we're going to be using a balance. A balance is a piece of standard laboratory equipment that is used often in introductory and general chemistry labs, as well as other types of chemistry laboratories. And to determine the volume of a penny, we're going to be using a very popular piece of laboratory glassware known as a graduated cylinder. And so for the first inquiry that we're doing, we're going to be determining the mass of 1 penny by determining the mass of 1 penny, and then determining the mass of 2 pennies, then of 5 pennies, of 10 pennies, of 20 pennies, and of 40 pennies. And then we're going to take that mass data for each set of pennies, and for those sets that include more than 1 penny, you're going to use the mass, for example, of 2 pennies, and then you're going to divide that mass of 2 pennies by 2 to determine the average mass of 1 penny. So therefore, the math application that we'll be focused on for this experiment is calculating averages. To determine the average of a set, you divide that set by the number of individual components in that set. So therefore, using the mass of 2 pennies, we can determine the average mass of 1 penny by taking the mass of 2 pennies and dividing by 2. And the result of that will be equal to the average mass of a penny based on the total mass of 2 pennies. And then we're going to determine the mass of 5 pennies. And then we're going to take that mass and divide by 5 to determine the average mass of 1 penny. And so on and so forth. 10 pennies, that total mass of 10 pennies will be divided by 10 to determine the average mass of 1 penny. And then we're going to do the same thing for 20 pennies and 40 pennies. And then in the end, we're going to take the average masses that we determine and determine, well, which one represents the best average mass of 1 penny. So you'll have a set of inquiry questions for inquiry set 1 to answer based on your average masses of the different collective sets of pennies. So that is going to be our first inquiry that covers the procedure steps 1 through 13. Once you watch the video of me determining the masses of each of the sets of pennies, you'll record those masses on your data sheet, and then you'll go into your individual group rooms and you'll do step 14. You'll answer the first set of inquiry questions. Once you've answered the first set of inquiry questions with your group, you'll return back to the general room and we will discuss